So my name is Brandon. I work for DynaTrace, which gives me an honor and a privilege for me to present to you the Unbreakable DevOps for Red Hat's perspective. So let me just actually move to the next slide. So again, thank you for your time attending this session. I hope you find it valuable with some of the things I will be sharing. But yeah, again, my role as a cloud strategist gives me an opportunity to work with Red Hat, which is our tech alliance partner from our perspective, which we hold dearly to our heart. And also, it gives me an opportunity to work with enterprise customers as well, like many of you in the audience today. So it gives me great honor to talk about how actually from a DynaTrace perspective, how we can actually look into monitoring OpenShift and make it a little bit more versatile, I would say. So for those of you, just want to call it out, don't know who DynaTrace is, I was like, who's this guy? So DynaTrace is a monitoring solution, full stack monitoring in that sense, and actually we've been a leader for the Gartner quadrant, the APM quadrant, for quite a while actually. So one thing to call out as well, that in the last Gartner report, we are actually furthest right and extreme top, which actually means that it's the first time actually that we've been given the opportunity and the honor to be the platform with AI eligibility, it's called, with the greatest ability to execute and the furthest in terms of the vision that we have to provide for the AI ops mindset. So actually, on that note, you might want to know what is AI ops and how cloud native actually works for enterprises these days. Actually, from a survey that we've conducted recently among of our enterprise customers, we realized that at this day and age, everyone wants to go into the cloud. Everyone wants to be in the forefront in terms of using technology, cutting-edge technology, and obviously adopting a lot of cloud services. But in that standpoint, a lot of the enterprises actually think that they are doing really, really well in terms of innovation, in terms of bringing the quality of code, that experience to their customers. But the truth of the fact is actually a lot of them are not innovating as fast as they think as they should be. And actually only 5%, if you were to compare with some of the leaders in this space like Google, Facebook, those that really, the cloud vendors out there, the organizations out there that really, Netflix, that really innovate really, really quickly, a lot of them are not as fast as they think they should be. So that brings me up to the next point where, as it stands, as an application, you might be using various types of technology stacks. You might be, obviously, as we stand today in Red Hat, you might be using OpenShift, as many of our enterprise customers are. But as you start deploying applications, as you start, using that mandate or start looking into using various cloud services, that doesn't necessarily make you cloud native as it stands. So some of the questions that we conducted through our survey gives us an opportunity to ask questions like you can see. So we ask questions like, how much of a significant reduction do you actually face when your applications goes into pushing into production? Do you actually see a huge drop in terms of, let's say, alerts, in terms of issues? Once you start looking to innovate faster, how quickly are you actually delivering your code? Has your lead time reduced? And if it has reduced, how short of a lead time do you have? And then obviously other things like, how often do you push new code, right? How often do you start innovation? And then one of the things, as we stand, as you see in the screen, 2-week sprints. If you were to go on the 2-week sprints, do you actually timely position that 26 times in a year? So I think that's one of the things. These are also one thing to call out as well. These are also the same questions that we ask ourselves as an organization. So our organization also went through some of these changes, these digital transformation, if you like it that way. And previously, where we were to release maybe 4 releases in a year, we've actually right now on our new platform released pretty much 26 times in a year. That means about bi-weekly. And obviously, from a ratio perspective, we also ask this very, very hard question. So from a DevOps perspective, are you looking, what is your DevOps ratio? So developers versus your operations team. Right? Ideally, I would say in an ideal world situation where you were to look into some of the DevOps books out there, this is something like the mantra, all right? The goal of a 200 to 1, which means 200 developers to one operations person. Now, again, this might be some astronomical numbers you might can imagine. But to be honest, like if you look at our own organization right now, we're pretty close. I would say we are about, the last I checked, we have about organization is about 2,000 plus strong. R&D stands about, I think, 600-700 right now, of which we only have about 6 DevOps person in our whole entire organization. So if you do the math, it's about 170 something, thereabouts. And that actually means, if you would ask, how do we actually do it? How do we actually keep up with, obviously, well, we're pushing a lot of features and functions in our product. How do you actually remediate fast? How do you actually breathe DevOps or live DevOps as it stands? So again, one of the things that we keep close to our heart is automation. And I think that is just a very evident tenet in this day and age where everyone's talking about it. But how does it actually stand? So actually, quite a funny quote, as you can see, when digital transformation is done right, it actually means that it's like a caterpillar turning into a butterfly, but when it's done wrong, it just makes that you're a really fast caterpillar. So what that actually shows that if you're trying to innovate quickly, you might have a lot of hurdles and obstacles along the way. So as you can see, when you go on the journey with cloud migration, DevOps, cloud native, Unbreakable DevOps is actually at the pinnacle of what we're all trying to attain. And that in our own language, we call that autonomous cloud. It's something that we hold pretty close to our heart. And again, that leads me back to what my solution would be, right? So DynaTrace in itself is a full stack monitoring platform, and that does have software intelligence built right at its core. So with that, as you can see some of the things in terms of the capabilities we would offer our customers, we basically built re-architected our software with the AI capability that allows us to ingest all the information that's coming in from various sources and relying on our one agent, which I would show you in a fair bit what it effectively is. And that, when fully encapsulated, gives us that full visibility into your application landscape. But again, the journey to DevOps require a few steps to get there, right? Having a full stack monitoring as a base is what we want to firstly attain. And obviously, with DynaTrace, we get to do some of those things. And then this will be the first few points and I was to be addressing as part of the talk today. Second point would be to have quality, has an automation of quality as it stands. So what does that mean? That means that when you are pushing up code, you want to make sure that that itself has a checking mechanism or quality gates as it stands at various stages, right? Delivery pipeline or the CI/CD pipeline should be as automated as it should. So what that means is when you are, again, pushing from one stage to the next, that shift left, shift right information of bouncing information between the stages should be an automated process. And obviously, when you're making decisions like should you promote or should you not, those should be built in as part of the code as well. So I'll get through some of these as part of the slides. But keeping it high level as it stands, obviously at the end of the day, organizations want to understand how do you effectively have things like auto-healing or auto-remediation, self-healing. So those are the things I would say in terms of an operation standpoint, how we attain that 200-to-1 ratio, that helps a lot. So first point, let me talk about automate monitoring. So this is how we do it as a software, if you like it that way, in a cloud world where, again, complexity is just a given, right? Regardless of other vendors that you might be using. We leverage all our own technology, our proprietary technology called the One Agent. So effectively, this agent will reside in all your boxes, your host operating systems, and from there we get the visibility of things. But when we look into an OpenShift environment, what it effectively means is obviously you might have a cluster with multiple nodes, multiple servers running in there, multiple applications to monitor, to discover, to keep monitoring as it stands. That's where we leverage off the operator framework, right? So one thing also to mention at this point, that DynaTrace, again, we work very closely with Red Hat's engineering team. So for example, in that scenario, when operator framework was announced, I think it was last year or something like that, or this year, days are a blur. We are actually on that very same summit, to say that we actually support it, right? So that's how closely we work as an engineering team. But obviously, we combine that together, and on the operator hub, as it stands, you can actually find us, right? The DynaTrace operator is there. What it does is, with the smarts of the agent baked into the operator, we push, right, our agents into all the nodes that you have in your cluster, with things like real-time monitoring, automatic updates, new feature functions, that's, again, delivered on a bi-weekly basis. That really helps us to give the full visibility into your environment. Obviously, if you have an application stack out there, when you are delivering new capabilities or you're using new technologies all the time, you need a monitoring solution to be up to speed with you, right? So for example, if you use the latest version of Nginx or the latest framework in whatever technology you might be using, technology stack you might be using, you need to have an agent or you need to have your monitoring solution pretty much a baked-in afterthought. So that's the goal, obviously, in that example, in that pyramid that you saw earlier. So when we have the agent baked in, these are some of the things that we can see. So the full stack topology of your environment, things like your events coming in from your host. So for example, if you restart a process, DynaTrace could easily detect that, right? If you see telemetry data coming from all sources, right, providing that layer of observability, DynaTrace could do those things as well. Having full stack tracing capability into the various technology stacks. Real-time user behavior, and that's something that's very keen to note as well. So as we start going to the cloud, obviously it's becoming really difficult to see, especially when you deploy applications on OpenShift, what you want to know is not just the code level stuff, but the user experience. And I know that the talk before me actually covered that in a fair bit, but we also bake that as a capability into our product, which means that the end user's experience, right? How happy are your users when they're accessing your web portals? How many clicks are they making? Where are they coming from? The IP addresses, things like that should all pretty much encapsulated through the capabilities baked into the product, onto the one agent. And when you have that fully mapped out, fully set up, I would say, in your environment, you get to have a visibility of this. We call this a smartscape view, in which, again, it's like the vertical, right, understanding dependency model built out right off the box with the agents deployed through the operator. So again, if you have multiple nodes in your cluster, your OpenShift cluster, with the operator setup, we actually deploy all the agents into every single node. We get to see all the containers, all the pods running in there. We get to see all the services used by the pods. And this is just pretty much an automatic manner, right? That discovery also leads me to the horizontal discovery as well, dependency model that's being built out, which means that for every entity that you were to detect, we can actually select that and drill down more into see what are the dependencies, right? These entities would they have amongst other services, other processes, other hosts that it's making. It's all, again, pretty much automatically discovered. We baked in all that, again, like I said before, in the earlier part of the slides, that the AI ops mantra or the AI capability is not an afterthought in DynaTrace perspective. We bake that in, right? As you see, from a product standpoint, among some of our competitors out there, we actually have this baked in right in the beginning. So like about 4 or 5 years ago, when we start re-architecting the product, as a design afterthought, we have to say, right, we want AI as part of that. What that actually means is it will help our customers, obviously, like yourselves, easily understand the problems, right, the issues, and not just having an alert sprawl or an alert storm, but really very quickly identify where the root cause is. So the Davis AI engine does all that, understanding the dependencies, and from there we feed out remediation steps, right? You saw in the top part of the pyramid, remediation, how can you do self-healing? Actions, providing actions. And again, on that note, we actually could feed out information to things like Ansible as well to trigger some of these playbooks. But that actually leads me to how we actually detect. So this is a video replay of a resolution path, which is like a problem replay. So as you can see, it composed of multiple alerts on the right-hand side. Each arrow, it's an individual alert. DynaTrace would contextually understand what the problem is, frame them all up in the context of a problem as opposed to individual alerts, and then construct this model which is based off the smartscape that you saw earlier. So we'll see the entities that were built into, they had dependencies, I would say, with each other. And then from there, we'll piece out where exactly did the problem happen, which impact did it have at which tier, and we piece out a model as such, right? So from there, you pretty much get to have the full understanding, the full visibility into your environment, and some screens from the various tiers that we could see that leads into, obviously, the various stakeholders that you might have in your organization. So what that means is we can, in DynaTrace, apply or use the product or the solution to the various teams, which, again, we talk about a single pane of glass or a single glass of paint, but in that sense, provide that information to the various teams so that you won't have various users looking at various types of solutions, I would say, and then getting confused with various kinds of data, right? Basically, to remediate and resolve the war room-type scenarios. And from there, again, you can build dashboards, out-of-the-box telemetry, or data coming from there, so that we can be responsible for business success. So ultimately, every user will feel they're responsible for the success of the business. Second stage is to automate the quality. And again, like if you remember the pyramid, after monitoring is set up, next thing you want to look into is how do I attain the good code, right? The quality of the code. So obviously, we integrate with various testing tools that you have in the market. And from there, actually, one of the things to note is we actually recently embarked on a journey, which is actually pushing us to, again, work closer with Red Hat, but also with some of the open source tools, I would say, or the open source market out there, which is called Captain, for those of you who doesn't aware of it. So Captain basically, as I'll show in a fair bit, is a part of Captain, I would say, has performance as code. So it's actually part of, it's actually on CNCF, we're trying to get ourselves endorsed by them. But what it does have is a performance spec JSON file, right? And from there, it basically has a performance signature when you pass through a testing tool of choice. We basically get all the data from the testing tool. We build an analysis of it through DynaTrace, performing that. And then we feed that, again, back as a feedback loop back into your CI/CD pipeline, right? So that you can then decide, should you promote or should you not promote your code change? And again, as part of Captain, this is a bit more detail into what that actually is. So for the techies in the room, basically, I had this slide in. So it allows us also, because again, we're trying to get into CNCF, we also endorse ourselves with other more open source tools out there in the market like Prometheus. So for example, in a Captain scenario, you can actually choose your metric source, right, where you want to define your data coming in, and you can actually define that as Prometheus. You can grade it in that scenario. So in the situation where you might have, for example, you're trying to get, I think this is RAM, right, memory, that's right, memory. So you can have a situation where if anything falls below the less amount, of utilization is the best, obviously. So anything less than 2 gigs, or more than 2 gigs is 20, 0 points, less than 2 gigs is 20, and then we can grade that score, right? And the second point is also we can gather metrics from DynaTrace standpoint. Again, like I said, because we could monitor all the end users' experience, what's important is when you're doing your testing runs, when you automate, or would say when you're doing tests, whether it's functional tests, unit tests, against your let's say pre-prod code as it stands in the application, you want to understand, what are the functional tests that you might be using. So DynaTrace allows you to do some conversion trends, understand its baseline between the user's acceptance rate, and obviously you can put various benchmarks in there to say whether is it passing or failing. You get a score from there as well. So basically the objective, I would say, the total scoring combines the monitoring score, and then you basically get a score from a grader standpoint. Again, that allows us to then decide when you're pushing up the application, should you pass it, should you fail it? And then from DynaTrace perspective, that information is all, by the way, automatically instrumented and fed into us. So all the tools, the tooling choice, testing tooling choice that you might have, all the events, whether is it, your source type or your scenarios, URL, ID, UUID, for example, can all be fed into DynaTrace, and we can then decide, right, 185 is a great run versus 186, that's not. And from a monitoring perspective, we straight away would know the deviation between that so that we can feed the information back into the pipeline. And that obviously leads me up to the next point in terms of an automate delivery, right? So again, from a pyramid standpoint, we have the monitoring set up, we have your intelligent quality gates done. What we want to do after that is to automate some of your other CI/CD tools, right? So from a pipeline standpoint, obviously you would have various tools that you have, right? You might be looking into pushing context through various quality gates. The context of which, whether from one stage to the next, again, like I said before, should be fed back at various stages, both shifting left and shifting right, so that you can have real understanding on the health of your application, right? Not just in production, but also in the various stages. So leads me back to my last point, which is the operation side of things. Again, apologies for rushing a bit, not much time left. But operations allows me to then understand, okay, great, we have the pipeline settled, we have the quality gate settled. What we want to do next is to then say, right, how can we trigger off a remediation as it stands? Or some form of self-healing when something were to go wrong. So because DynaTrace, again, have the ability to understand the root cause and to identify the root cause, we can quickly then provide the right form of remediation as it stands. So for example, if it's a CPU exhausted scenario, right, we can add a new service or spin up a new pod or container in that sense, right? Or if it's an exhaustive connection pool, can perhaps increase the pool size, so and so, or you can read on the screen. But depending on the various kinds of scenarios, you can write around playbooks. In that scenario, those playbooks could be set up as templates within Ansible. Then the right issue were to occur, you're basically just triggering off a right playbook from Ansible's standpoint. And again, those issues and incidents could be then triggered off to your incident management tool, again, of choice. And then obviously we can close up the entire thing by sending the information back into DynaTrace to see if the resolution has been resolved. So a video of what that looks like could be like this, where again, this is a ticket monster, which is one of the applications that we have from Red Hat. So basically, we're releasing a new service through Ansible Tower as it stands, where actually the new deployment causes a breakage due to an error in microservice. DynaTrace would then straight off instantly discover that issue, right? As you can see, the deployment information will come in straight off into DynaTrace, all the details and the events of the deployment. And again, we can straight away find the spike in terms of failure rates, understand what that spike is, drill down the context to see what that spike is. And again, on the left-hand side, you can see that the errors are happening on the web front end, right? And a comment is made within the problem to say the playbook remediation has started, which means basically the alerts have been detected, and from DynaTrace standpoint, we trigger off a remediation step in Ansible, which actually happened kind of behind the scenes. And on the right-hand side, straight away, you can actually see that the problem has been resolved, right? The remediation step actually took place already without anyone's knowing, I would say. So this is the ideal situation when it comes to providing that next level of visibility, or having the next level up, I would say, in terms of DevOps. So again, to create that is to do some of these things. Again, to automate monitoring at the various stages. So some of the things I want to very quickly summarize, some of the things I've covered. Monitoring the data centers, have the visibility into the various tech stack that you might have, whether it's the host level information, getting all the way up to the visibility into your processes, full-fledged understanding of the physical processes versus your logical services that we can actually see and detect with DynaTrace, and obviously building up your dashboards if required at the various stages. Quality, again, integrating all those information into your testing tool of choice to feed that and provide that feedback loop. Automate the delivery, which means that effectively, once we're seeing that full stack discovery of your environment, we want to basically go through the various stages. So again, when we're building out the pre-prod or at staging, how we're going to complete that information and feed that out to the next stage. Again, all the events, the telemetry data, everything should be baked into DynaTrace, which then gives us an ability to decide, should we pass or fail that information, should we then decide not to push through. And automating operations, right? So again, basically in a high-level perspective, to again create some form of next steps to remediate issues as it happen. So that basically is what DynaTrace terms as autonomous cloud management. So again, summation of some of the things that we talked about. When you're looking into monitoring, it becomes crucially important to not just have it in production, I would say, but obviously to have it at various stages, right? So that we can have the full visibility when we're looking into to provide a more streamlined approach into monitoring your application, because it's not just in prod, it is also at the various stages, right? So that we can actually have a cleaner code, better quality, innovate faster, as some of the survey questions basically that we saw in the earlier part of the day. But again, this is just some of the things that we want to address as we start to look into the market. We realize that enterprises really need this level of visibility. And again, some of the stuff into some of the conversations that I have with some of the customers. One of the slides I did, I think it's missed out from the deck, was that we work with a few key customers, right, within both DynaTrace and Red Hat. Some like a big bank in the US, where they actually embarked on this journey, and they actually saw a huge shift in the way they embarked on their business. So they had a huge resolution in terms of their problems, have a better understanding of their application ecosystem, if you like it that way. So it's really crucial and important for us to have this for most enterprise customers. So with that, that's the end of my session. Thank you for taking time out to listen to me. Again, feel free to, we have a booth outside. Feel free to come and talk to me after the session if you want to, and also talk to some of my colleagues. We can find out more about what we do and how we can apply this methodology for your enterprises. Feel free to have that session with me. But if not, thank you for your time.